Hello, system thinkers. Welcome to the recap for episode 075 of The Question. I'm very excited to have my friend Cassie Groos here. Cassie, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been good.
Yeah, we just completed the deep dive. So 1 full hour of unpacking all the data that we gathered, and we took a little break, and now you and I are back here just to sort of like recap what we learned. There's a lot of flexibility in this conversation. We can talk about what questions should we have asked that we didn't. We'll talk about the answers that we saw in the data. But just for folks who are just joining us, this week we asked 5 questions, and our topic this week was this idea of the design system identity crisis. And so we kind of found some questions to hone in on that concept. And so the first of those questions was, how would you describe your design system team's posture toward AI right now? And we gave folks the options of leaning in hard, experimenting carefully on the side, watching closely but not changing much, skeptical the hype outpaces the reality, or an NA or other. The second question was also a little bit more quantitative like that. And we asked, there's a common narrative that design systems are AI's necessary foundation. How much do you believe that protects your role as a design system practitioner? And we asked folks to select one from a list that included strongly, somewhat, not really, I hadn't thought about it that way, or NA and other. And then we had 3 questions that were a little bit more qualitative in nature, just open text. And those were, describe how your role as a design system practitioner has changed in the last 12 months. If you had to redefine design system in 1 sentence for someone joining the field today, what would you say? Gosh, that's a hard question. 1 sentence. And then the last open text was, what's a bet that you're making about design systems right now that you might be wrong about this time next year? We sent this out to 1,083 design system practitioners. As always, wherever you're watching or listening, in the comments, you can get the link to the raw data yourself to do your own analysis. So please take a look at that raw data. There's a ton of great information in there, as there is every episode. And I started us off in the deep dive with just this moment to pause a little bit, just acknowledging that in our space, there's been a lot of layoffs again recently in the last week or so. This stuff is continuous and it's impacting a lot of the community. And so we just wanted to pause and say, hey, if that's you, if you're struggling in that way, if you've gone through that situation, however we can support you, even if that's just sort of acknowledging that experience that you're having, we want to do that. So please reach out and get connected on LinkedIn or wherever you do your social stuff. I think it's really important that more than ever, I think the community around this stuff is more important. And so we want the question community to be the kind of group that sort of rallies around folks when they need that support. So please let us know if that's you. And then I've been trying each episode to sort of identify an answer from the answers that we get to the questions that sort of like captures the sentiment of the whole. And so this was an answer that came in from someone on, I think it was question 3 or 4, which was about your role and how that role has changed. And this person said, the role has gone from having a somewhat clear vision of where we're going and what excellence would look like to navigating the moment and acknowledging that no one knows where we're going to end up. And I think that sort of like unsettled feeling was prominent almost throughout all the answers. And Cassie, I want to just like kind of put you on the spot to sort of share what you shared with the deep dive, because I thought it was such a great way for us to start.
I think I just wanted to reframe that narrative and that idea as, I think, an opportunity for us to define where we're going or where we're going to end up, or at least try to shape or control that direction a little bit. I do think that design system practitioners, while it can be hard to kind of get our foot in the door, we have various ways and means of, having almost an outsized influence. And so let's keep looking for those opportunities to use that for good.
Yeah. Actually, let's drill in a little bit on that. What do you mean when you say that as systems practitioners, we have an outsized ability to make an impact?
I think it's very easy to be almost this kind of unseen element within an organization. We kind of sit quietly in a back room creating this thing that everybody uses and most people don't appreciate. Tends to be quite a consistent feeling. But then also we can have a lot of impact and influence with even the metrics that we've got, the control that we've got, the choices that we make, especially around things like quality and accessibility, because we can just often choose to do things a certain way, and then that is how they're done.
Yeah.
Mostly because we get left alone.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like the isolation to a certain extent, or maybe just like the lack of understanding maybe that some leaders have over what we're actually doing, at least down into the nuance of the day-to-day, you know, maybe allows us to kind of make choices in that way that can have a really positive impact across many, many products, many teams, an entire organization. So I love that perspective. That's really good. I didn't ask you this on the deep dive, but will you just say what was going on in your mind when you brought this topic? Like what's happening in your world right now that this idea of design system identity crisis has been like top of mind for you?
I mean, there was a couple of things. So I am currently, architecting a pretty complex design system that a lot of people are relying on in a landscape where the ground underneath our feet is just constantly changing.
Yeah.
And finding myself just having to do a lot of spikes all over the place to try and figure out what it is I should be doing. And I can't do all the things, so I'm doing some of them. Other people are doing different things. And I'm just fascinated with kind of where this is all going to converge and come back together, and what a design system is actually going to look like. There's so many different conversations happening, so many different opinions. And then at one point there was a tweet that someone had sent to me, and I think it was one of the designers from Anthropic who was just like, we don't need component libraries in design systems anymore. And I was just like, don't we?
Yeah.
And that was really like a bit of a moment for me where I was like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to be really contrarian about that. And that's where I ended up thinking a lot about, well, what are our principles? And we know that AI probably only gets you to 80%. And so if we ditch the component library entirely, are we leaving behind our principles around quality and consistency and so on? So yeah, I've just been kind of digging more and more into that now.
Yeah. And you're going to be speaking at Hatch conference as well. And I don't think the topic is directly this, but adjacent to this topic for sure. Mm-hmm. That is in September, I think you said, right?
That is in, September I want to say 19th.
Okay.
I'm feeling awful that I don't just have that date.
Oh, it's all right. No worries. Yeah. People can look it up, but
18th.
18th. Okay. And where's that at?
That is in Berlin. So
okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to hopefully they'll record that so I can watch it. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to Berlin for that one, but
they definitely will. So.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thanks again for bringing this topic. We had a wide-ranging conversation with the deep dive. Folks were very engaged this week and jumped right in. And we started with kind of like the idea of these two more quantitative questions about like your design system team's posture towards AI, and then also your sort of like belief in the narrative that we as system practitioners are protected a bit from the challenges that AI is bringing to the space and around like employment, because AI needs systems as a foundation. And when we combined those together a little bit, we kind of like saw that that about 3 out of every 4 respondent is actively adopting AI. So all the folks who answered, all the folks who came to the deep dive, about 3/4 of us are digging in pretty hard with AI. But only 1/4 strongly believe that work is actually going to protect, the system work is actually going to protect our roles. And so it kind of got me wondering, like, what is it that's driving our adoption? Is that curiosity or fear of falling behind? And then you kind of brought this idea of like, hey, owning, like if you sort of expand the system role to owning a little bit more around AI workflows, AI enablement, maybe that's a stronger narrative around protecting our roles. Can you say a little bit more about what's sort of how that's happening in your world? Or
Yeah, I think so we've got that kind of like underlying belief that, the design system is the answer to wrangling the kind of like naughty stochastic AI into submission. Um, and yeah, I think it probably is and will remain to be. But then also now what we're seeing is the adoption of AI into the design system workflow itself.
yeah,
And so that is where it starts to impact people's jobs, because you just, as we're seeing across like most professions, you just need less people if you have more AI, but it's not no people. You still need some people.
yeah,
Um, and so the people who are going to be most protected in their roles are the ones who are kind of managing the AIs, the humans that stay in that loop. And so I think just embracing that and learning how to be good at that
yeah,
and just positioning yourself in as that person or those people,
yeah.
is probably the most protective place.
Have you always been somebody who's um, like from the beginning curious about and experimenting with AI, or did you resist it for a while?
No, I was like straight in.
Straight in. Okay.
I was just always very, very curious, very excited. It was like, I've been watching sci-fi my whole life, like waiting
Yeah.
for this. I'm not sure that I imagined it was going to find its way into my career and become so pivotal
Mm,
so quickly. I was just like using it for fun and like chatting with ChatGPT, and experimenting kind of in my own projects.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. I was talking with my youngest kid the other day, and they're using a like a Google Docs alternative that doesn't allow AI training or it doesn't use AI features because
Mhm.
and this is a 10th grader,
Yeah.
and they're like keenly aware of sort of like the ethical implications of AI and how these models have been trained and things like that. And actually, both of my kids are sort of like anti-AI, and that's just like fascinating to me that a younger generation of folks kind of coming on the scene. We always think of them as being like very tech savvy, right? Teaching their parents how to email and whatnot, maybe in our generation. But I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? Or like, why do you think that's the case? This is totally a side trail, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, do I want to say this on video? I have a slightly controversial perspective around the ethics on training AI, and I think um, my kind of position on that is so long as they have like paid for the sources, which I know is not always
Yeah.
true. We also train humans
Yeah.
on the same sources. We train humans in exactly the same way. They can't absorb quite as much, but we train humans, and then those humans are used by companies to make money for themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's that different.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Um,
That's definitely a perspective I haven't heard. I think it's like a lot of folks get a
mm,
whiff of like that idea of like ethical concerns and sort of jump right on that. But I'm like just curious about how people, sort of
yeah.
deal with that concern in their daily life. It's tricky because, right, like if you're working in any organization today, most organizations are applying a lot of pressure to folks to use this stuff. And if you opt out, you're opting out of a job in a lot of ways, so that makes
Sure.
this not black and white for sure. Um, well, thanks for indulging me a little bit into some ethical conversation. Can we jump to question 4? Because we didn't actually get much time to talk about this in the deep dive. And we actually haven't. It's funny, like we've done, so this is episode 75.
Uh-huh.
I don't think we've ever just asked the question, what is a design system?
You know, someone asked me the other day, so what is it you do? And then they were like, so
Yeah.
what exactly is a design system? And I just completely flubbed it. Like,
If anyone can answer, it's you, Cassie. What did you say?
I just ended up waffling on like a whole bunch of stuff that they just didn't understand. And then I was like, what am I even talking about?
Yeah.
Are there some answers here that I can just like steal?
There's some good ones. Yeah. You know, it was funny. Like I tried to kind of categorize them. There were about half of the folks who kind of said design systems are fundamentally the same thing, right? Like that they haven't really changed. About 30 or 40% were in this camp of like, it's evolving and the definition is evolving to include AI as an audience. In other words, the systems have to serve AI, not just humans, right? And then there was another 10 to 12% or so who were just like, didn't want to answer the question or don't feel ready to answer it. I think the sentiment here was largely, there's too much in flux to try and like nail down a definition right now, and that give us another 6 to 12 months and we should know. Who knows, right? So yeah, I mean, I think you'll see this like humans and AI in a lot of these answers, right? Like people are trying to sort of include AI in the definition, but
I mean, I suppose it depends like how deep you want to go.
A
design system is a system for designing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to change like at a very top level.
Right.
Then
That's
the
true.
definition does not change. If we're talking about what are the different components of a design system, what does it need to do, who does it need to serve, and we start to get deeper into it, then I mean, absolutely it's changing. So I wonder if those answers are very much based around how people are defining the word defining.
Yeah, that's fair.
One thing from the session that I found notable was how casually people are talking about including skills and agents as a resource, a component within their design system. Just like that is absolutely a thing that we've just been doing forever, obviously.
Yeah. It's wild.
Which was yeah, it was great to see. But
yeah, I think that it's interesting, like your perspective there on like, hey, if you stay at the high level, it's a system for making UI, you know, essentially. I think that's true. I you know, my approach to systems has, of course, you have to do the sort of tactical assets and things, but my approach has been pretty at the high level for a while now, thinking about culture, because what I'm more interested in is like what people actually do with all those assets. And if you want to see real results, it's not enough to give people just the assets to use. You have to like shift their way of thinking, you know? And so to me, that's culture, you know?
Yeah.
And so the tools though definitely kind of layer into that, you know, like what people do with them is changed by the tools they have available to them. So for me, it definitely feels like the definition is changing, but I also like, I think of the system of a design system as a really broad thing. Like I use the word program pretty intentionally when I talk about systems because it's a very holistic approach. It is 1/3 of it is maybe asset work, you know, and then 2/3 is communication and process and our values and like how we make choices 1,000 times a day that do or don't align with the system, you know? And so that's where I think the real value is. And when you offload decision-making to algorithms or to machines, AI, all of a sudden now we have to be thinking about how we inform those decisions too. And that kind of bled into this, this thread that we saw in a handful of answers that was this idea that there's like a lot more work for us now, right? It used to just be this top level of like for humans stuff, right? Documentation, components, guidelines. Of course, there's more to it than that, but generally. And now we're saying also for AI documentation, we have to have context files, right? We have to have components as data. We have to have hard and fast rules that kind of remove ambiguity instead of like trust a human to make a good judgment, right? And so gosh, like how does this sit with you? Like there being more work now for us?
Yeah, I mean, so there was a couple of interesting comments in the session. One which came up in the chat, which was about living in the seams, which is where you're still feeling like that tension between like, well, am I serving humans or am I serving the AI overlords now? Sorry. And trying to juggle all of this, which is a little bit how I feel. But I mean, I'm under so much time pressure. I'm not getting to look at half of the stuff yet anyway. So
Yeah.
it's all just hypothetical. And then there was, I think, something that Stephen mentioned about what they're finding in reality is that people are not even looking at documentation anymore.
Yeah.
They're just talking to the AI agent. So maybe we start looking at this and we're like, well, actually, we don't need to write documentation for designers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to write guidelines. What we do need to write is like context files and skills, and then they can get all of that information they need by talking to AI. And then so we're not doing double the work, which is changing the work that we do and changing how we allow people to access that information.
Yeah.
It's just whether we can expect and rely upon the changes in behavior, but based on what we're seeing in terms of like AI adoption, probably.
Yeah.
I think visual components, will not be replaced by components as data anytime soon for human consumption, because people like to look at things with their eyes.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening, but also you can generate components as data from components using AI. So I think I get it, but also let's start looking at how we form that shape of the future and how we make that work more efficient.
Efficiency was another thread in the conversation, but in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting. There was a lot of conversation around the cost of AI and the idea that we need to be more efficient, or we need to find ways to be more efficient in our AI usage because the cost of AI is rising rapidly, and the expectations are, as the subsidies are removed from its use, that it's going to continue to get more and more expensive. Have you been thinking about that, like token usage and efficiency and all that, or?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Not intensely, but we have started to have conversations around how to make context, specifically the CRDs, which are our component requirement documents, as efficient as possible, so that when we start to compound those documents, when we start to have the AI needing to reference multiple CRDs about multiple subcomponents, atomic components that may sit within a modular component, that the token usage kind of spikes dramatically. But also, like, why do we care? I mean, it's going to get more expensive, and then they may have to like hire people instead of pay for more tokens. Is that why do we care?
Right. Maybe not a bad thing.
I don't really care, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not paying the bill.
That's true. That's true.
Boss.
Yeah. Well, hopefully your boss doesn't watch this episode.
Yeah.
No, that's an interesting point. I mean, it's I've been reading a lot of those articles about the costs and the subsidies and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't thinking about it in the context of this question. So it was kind of cool that was brought up. What else? Like if we just step away from the nitty gritty of this, what did you walk away from the deep dive thinking? Like, was there any takeaway for you? Like, what are you going to do differently tomorrow? Was there anything that you want to change about your approach?
I think some of my biggest kind of takeaway was that I am like very interested in what everyone else within the community is doing in terms of like building AI into their workflows, in terms of supporting AI as a consumer, I would like to talk to more people.
Yeah.
I would like to do like more research within the community and just see more demos and just get more involved in what other people are doing, because I think there's a lot of interesting work going on
Yeah.
that people aren't talking about too loudly.
Hmm.
I for me, I think one of the really important messages that I keep telling myself and also keep kind of going on about is just like not letting the pressure to use AI cause us to forget what our principles are as design system practitioners. And we're usually quite principled people, and we come into this with a sense of like, this is the level of quality we want. We want to make sure that things are accessible, that they are sustainable, that they are maintainable, and it's very easy when you're under a lot of pressure to move quickly and to adopt things like AI to, I guess, potentially leave some of those principles at the door, get distracted. And that was like circling back to that tweet.
Yeah.
It kind of kicked all this thinking off for me. Was just like, well, sure, we could like ditch component libraries, but are we then ditching like that quality control that is usually such an important principle to most of us? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you are sitting down in the morning and you're about to start your like first work task of the day, do you like reach for Claude or something like instinctually now? Or do you know what I'm asking? Like, I've been feeling this lately. I think I've been spending a lot of time recently with Claude, building a set of skills for some work that I do pretty regularly, like repetitively. And so it's been like a big part of my day for the last couple weeks. And so I've just found that after like having it be something more intentional for me for a season like that, everything on my to-do list that I go to do, it's like I find myself leaning towards it instead of just doing it in a way that I know I can do it rapidly and quickly using the skills that I have learned over the years,
As a human, yeah.
Are you feeling that? Or
I mean, yeah, I it's so kind of integrated into my workflow now. I mean, if I have a question, I still use Google, but if it's a deeper question, if it's something more complicated, then we'll go to Claude. And I do a lot of my Figma work now just through Claude Code. A lot of the grunt work. And then I go in and like finesse things by hand, which is strange on reflection. I didn't expect that to happen so quickly. We're actually using Copilot a bunch at work, and I'm part of the kind of like AI champion team.
Yeah.
So I have to look for ways to make Copilot work efficiently for us, and then kind of get people on board with that. So I've been playing around with that a lot lately. And I also often build my own tools, which I then use myself. So I'm leaning on AI all the time in lots of different ways. Do I just like sit down in the morning and get straight on Claude? Probably not. Yeah. I don't know that it's like the first thing that I turn to.
Yeah. That's good.
But it just feels embedded in everything now. So.
Yeah, it's sort of like under the surface, it's there, lingering. Yeah. Well, Cassie, I just want to say thanks to you for the vulnerability and the just a willingness to kind of talk through all of this with me. This kind of thing doesn't really work without folks like you who are willing to step up and kind of help facilitate and I know it takes a lot of time to like think through the questions and the context and all of that. So I really do appreciate your time and your energy and your generosity with your knowledge. Thank you.
It's been really wonderful process, actually. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, we'll see you again soon, I hope. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Question. Remember, you can get access to the raw data, the collaborative Fig Jam, and all of the recordings for this episode and many more on my website, bencallahan.com. If you or your team could use an outside perspective in your design system efforts, I'd be honored to support you in that way. There's more information about my coaching and consulting offerings over on the site. And if you need a hand building a sustainable design system program, my studio, Sparkbox, is standing by, ready to partner. Hiring Sparkbox is an investment in your design system and your team. Reach out and let's see if there's a good fit. Thanks for being here, and remember, stay in learning mode.